Hello everyone, Warren here with the Peach State Prime Transformers channel. And today is a Tuesday, the first Tuesday in June. And for Transformers Tuesday, we actually got news of an upcoming reissue from Hasbro. It is from the Transformers Siege line. And that is Siege Greenlight. Now, I was fortunate enough to obtain Greenlight during the initial offering, going way back to when Siege, the Siege portion of the War for Cybertron trilogy, at least I believe that's what it was. It seems so long ago, that it was offered. And, this was, kind of a specialty retail exclusive, kind of along the lines of Selects, but it was not in Selects packaging. It actually had its own, unique packaging to it. And we're going to get into that here as we take a look. But, we'll see if this is a figure that's worth adding to your collection. All right, so here we have Greenlight in her robot mode. Now, I do have her holding, she comes with a Battle Master. And if you remember Battle Masters, again, going way back to Siege, they were like little companions, kind of like the Action Master weapons that would come with the figures back then during the later part of G1, where they were kind of like an animal, almost like a Target Master that could turn into some sort of weapon. This one here, this is called, I believe, Dazzler. And you can see it's actually a sword, and it came with this really cool blast effect that made it look like a flaming sword. So that's one thing I like about this Greenlight toy, is just how cool that looks. Now, we take a look, and it's been a while. Like, I have not even pulled this thing off my shelf until it was ready, for a long time, and then, this opportunity to rediscover this figure because of the reissue came up, and so I figured, okay, we'll take a look. And I believe, okay, the sword should go up underneath here. No. And yeah, something this small generally isn't that hard to transform. Okay, there we go. I had the legs all upside down. Okay. So you got this little, I don't know, Dazzler is kind of like this little wolf. I'm sure this is a repaint of an earlier Battle Master offering. But, the sword, the blade kind of just flips up, and it's kind of a blaster. I believe, does this have a port on the end of the fire here? It doesn't look like it, so you can't really use the blast effect like that. But, you do have, kind of almost looks like a laser, even if it is just kind of like a short sword on the back. That's a pretty nifty little accessory. Greenlight's other accessory, since this is a retool of a Combiner Wars mold, or Combiner Wars era mold, it technically might have come out after that. You have the classic, what everybody calls the hand-foot gun. And of course, this one is painted to match Greenlight, and she likes to hold on to it very tightly. You still have this, her color scheme, it's kind of reminds me of like Sprite, almost, or Lemon Lime. So you got that color scheme translated over here. Of course, you could put like a Prime Master or anything in this little clear spot, if you remember Prime Masters, or the little spark cubes, whatever you want to call them. But of course, as the name implies, for a Combiner Wars era toy or mold, this is what you'd use to make either a hand or a foot for the combined mode, or of course a gun like I had Greenlight holding. There is another way, and I've seen a lot of promotional pictures, especially for the reissue, where I don't even know how they did it, but they have this attached to Greenlight, like her chest here, like as like armor, which I'm not even going to attempt to figure it out because I'm just going to say that looks dumb. And it totally takes away from the character sculpt. And I mean, you know, obviously this mold has been reused for several characters. But, you know, there is some resculpting and some retooling that goes on each time. And this, you know, those little bits like this part here, her abdomen and all that, I mean, it really just takes away from her torso and the work they did to retool this figure into Greenlight to make her a little bit different than some of the other female Autobots, which we'll also, you know, do a comparison with here in just a bit. Greenlight herself, as I mentioned, her sculpt and paint job are actually pretty impressive. I mean, for this, again, being a retool slash repaint. I love the green, the clear green plastic on this. And again, reminds me a lot of like lemon lime or, again, Sprite, something along those lines. But, you know, that's cool because we don't really have this color scheme on another figure, at least that I could think of. I mean, this lighter greenish yellow color almost reminds me of like the glow-in-the-dark kind of green color. It's not, but it's awfully darn close. All right, for a good comparison here in robot mode, I have two of her sisters, her actual mold buddies, Firestar and Moonracer. You can see they do share the same tooling. It's very much the same mold. However, the differences are, of course, they each have a different gun, with Greenlight's being the kind of the standout favorite of mine. You know, that Battle Master Dazzler there with that flaming sword accessory. But, you know, it works for all of them. But what I was calling out before with the retooling, you could tell all their heads are different. Different sculpts, different coloring. And then all their torsos and abdomens are all different as well. So if you do something, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to be too judgy, but if you do something stupid, like the promotional pictures show, putting the hand-foot gun over their body, you miss out what makes them stand out even more so than just being a repaint with a different head. There's actually different sculpting going on throughout most of the bodies here. So again, you know, you use it as a gun, you know, or just don't display it with the figure. It is my opinion. As far as a couple other comparisons that I like to show is, I do have Chromia, which is a completely different mold. Of course, the one that the animated RC Legacy figure is based on. And of course, you know, they scale very well together. You know, and it makes sense that we have some that are actually different molds. And then, of course, you know, you have to include Elita 1, you know, also from Legacy. And again, scales very well. It's not the giant Voyager one that turns into a jet. But, you know, they all, in the G1 show, when the female Autobots showed up, they're all very much in scale with each other. So I think these figures do a great job, and Greenlight's a great addition to that. You know, not going to show everybody like Windblade and RC. Trying to stick with those, you know, those core classic female Autobots. And of course, you know, you're going to get a group shot here at the end. But let's take a look at the vehicle mode of Greenlight and see how that looks. Alright, now we have Greenlight in vehicle mode. Now, Greenlight's vehicle mode is, in fact, a Cybertronian car. You know, sometimes the Cybertronian modes are good, and sometimes they're not so good, as far as just something that was made up. I personally like this one. I think it pulls it off very well. Transformation from robot mode to vehicle mode is actually pretty intuitive. I have not transformed this thing really since first getting it. And I was able to do it just by looking at a photo of the vehicle mode. So I really like that. I I love, again, some people don't like translucent plastic. I think it's pulled off very well on this figure. Again, you can see kind of some of the internal workings of the vehicle mode there. Kind of like a little cockpit here. As far as rolling, you know, it's not the best, but it's far from the worst. So, you know, I'll say that's a pass and a good job on that. You know, I like it. Again, it's a solid vehicle mode here. I mean, you can see the hands here, but, you know, from the side, you really don't. And then you don't see the robot head, which, again, that's a big pet peeve of mine. As far as the Combiner Wars era gimmick, you do have that Combiner port here, or Combiner limb, I guess you want to call it, attachment. And then, of course, this is where your hand-foot gun would plug in, either to be a hand or a foot. You can also plug it in if you really, really want to. There's a port in the back here. You can attach it, and it's going to take some fiddling to make sure that it fits in there just right. And, I mean, you can kind of, you know, I guess say it's a booster, you know, on the back of the vehicle mode. So that works. I mean, it's better than, you know, non-holding places where you could put it in the robot mode. And I mean, if you still want it to be a gun, you know, I suppose you could plug it in here, because this part, this is where the head's hidden. But it does move around. It's just not easy to plug this in. Well, okay, well, we're gonna forget that. But you could do something, you know, kind of like that. You know, you can tell it's a little fiddly in that regard, but it's a nice solid car on its own. And let's take a look at a couple comparisons here. Alright, and then here's Greenlight in vehicle mode alongside Firestar and Moonracer. And, you know, they still have, despite essentially being the same mold, they still have their own characteristics outside of paint jobs. I mean, of course, those torso sections are essentially, you know, hidden in this back section here. Not really hidden, but featured there. So the shapes of the vehicles are a little different. When you look at Greenlight side by side here, you can tell this section up front is more clear, where they made it opaque with an Autobot symbol on Moonracer. I'd say Moonracer and Greenlight out of this trio have more in common in vehicle mode than Greenlight and Firestar do. Firestar is a little bit different, especially if you look at the front. This is all just, well, I didn't snap that together too well there, did I? Hang on. Let's get that fixed, shall we? It's wanting to be finicky where it really wasn't with the other two. Okay, well, we're just going to roll with that. But anyways, you can see this is all opaque through here, and even in this upper section where we swapped that out for some clear plastic on Greenlight here, and of course Moonracer. But, you know, they do resemble each other, but, you know, if you're going to be a Cybertronian car, surely there's going to be some similarities there. And I do think, you know, and this may sound a little weird in a sense, or strange, but as far as vehicle modes are concerned, you know, these are female Autobots. This kind of looks like a sleek kind of, I'm going to use the word feminine, you know, vehicle mode. And it works very well on the one we're reviewing here, Greenlight. And, but, you know, that's supposed to be like that. You know, it's sleek, you know, kind of curvy. So, you know, it works well for these characters. And, of course, you know, we have several other molds for female Autobots and Decepticons, Maximals and Predacons. But for a trio, you know, a trio here that are essentially sisters, you know, they still stand on their own. There is, I believe, a fourth one that I don't own, and everybody's probably screaming at their computers now. If you remember the name of the purple and orange female Autobot that also shares this tooling, you know, I'm not looking it up while I'm on camera, but, you know, share that in the comments, you know, if you remember the exact name of that character. And I believe it was released as kind of a select style type figure, kind of like Greenlight was here, despite it not really being labeled as selects or in that brown box. All right, here's your group shot of some of the more classic or earlier, as they appeared in fiction, female Autobots, with, of course, Greenlight there in the middle, with her blazing sword of justice, and yes, I made that name up. But again, I think they look really good together, and Greenlight is definitely a welcome addition to this section of my collection. You know, my section, my shelf section, where I put all the female Autobots. And of course, I have, Vector Sigma and Alpha Trion, you know, right there along with them, because they shared a lot of stories together in G1. But yeah, Greenlight, you know, fits right on in with the crew here. All right, so time for some final thoughts. So what do I think of Greenlight here? So again, it's being reissued. I really like this figure. Again, I think it fits very nicely in with the rest of the female Autobots. The sculpt and mold is nice, you know, whether you're talking retooled parts or just, you know, the mold in general. It's not bad, especially when you're looking at a Cybertronic vehicle, or Cybertronian vehicle. And, you know, it makes sense for the female Autobots, because that is how they were primarily featured, again, in G1. They were on the planet Cybertron, not really on Earth. Now, you know, everything being said, the reissue that has gone up for pre-order today is priced at, I believe, right around $43. I believe it's $42.99. And that's, you know, according to Hasbro Pulse. So, is this figure worth $43? Well, you know, I just had a big rant video on the new Sentinel Prime costing $68, and I stand by everything I said in that video. Spoiler alert, I do not think that figure is worth $68. This figure being $43 is absolutely worth it, in my opinion. And here's why. You know, she is a deluxe. Greenlight here is a deluxe. There's no mistake in that. And, you know, that's a deluxe, including, you know, the hand-foot gun and the basic figure here. Not the sword, not Dazzler. The Battle Master. The going rate for a deluxe right now is around $28. 28, you know, between $27 and $30. The Voyager price is right around $43, which is what they're asking for the reissue. Between, you know, the deluxe figure being as, you know, great as it is with the paint colors, the sculpt, you know, I feel like it has a little bit more detail in the paint job here, especially when you look at the face compared to some of the other deluxes out there. So, okay, that part's good. But then you throw in the Battle Master, which is awesome, and then this amazing, you know, flame effect here, and price it up at a Voyager price point. I think that's fair. So if you don't have Greenlight in your collection, if you missed out on her and you're debating about the reissue, I recommend it. I think, you know, No, I don't think Voyagers should cost $43, but again, we got to compare apples to apples, what's currently on the market, what the current price is. And, you know, if we're upscaling a deluxe to a Voyager by including a transforming figure, such as a Battle Master, that's this awesome sword and comes with this, you know, translucent flame effect, yeah, you know, I think this should be priced at whatever the going rate for a Voyager is. So, I'm going to say this is a great figure and absolutely, you know, worth adding to your collection if you haven't already. Right, everyone. Well, of course, I do want to thank you very much for watching this video. I invite you to, of course, give it a like if you did enjoy it, and of course, subscribe to Peach State Prime Transformers for more reviews like this, as well as, you know, other fun stuff, news discussions. I just uploaded a picture of Weird Al Yankovic performing Dare to Be Stupid live. So again, just, you know, anything, you know, somewhat related to Transformers I'll feature here if I think it's good content and something I feel people would enjoy or get something out of. Of course, leave a comment. You know, do you have Greenlight? Do you plan on picking her up? Who's your favorite female Transformer or Autobot? Would love to hear from you. And of course, you know, let me know what you think about, you know, my opinion on the value of this figure versus that of Sentinel Prime, which, again, I was not very candid about. Outside of that, I do have my original channel, simply called Peach State Prime, where I cover all sorts of other fun stuff. You know, nerdy and not nerdy, including travel videos with tourist attractions, amusement parks, fun events, fun places to eat and shop. You know, feel free to check that out if you're looking for just some fun content out there. But outside of that, I do want to thank you very much once again for watching this video. Hope you have a great day, and God bless.